Today you join me in my lockdown bid from the garage where, seeing as there's not a whole lot else going on in the car scene at the moment, I'm going to be servicing the E36 and I'm going to show you how it's done. I've serviced quite a few BMWs now in my time, but never an E36. However, the power plant of this is almost identical to my old E30, so I'm not too concerned about that. They're surprisingly simple cars, to be honest. So, I mean, if you're thinking of getting one or you've never serviced one before, I'd recommend giving it a go. It's pretty damn straightforward. First things first, what do you need to service your car? Is a air filter, a fuel filter, a oil filter, and some spark plugs. This car, if you're wondering, is a 97 318 IS, so it's the M44 B19. Basically the same as, E30 318 IS, E36 318i, 318 IS, they're all pretty much the same crap. In terms of servicing parts, as far as I know, if you have a 6, process itself is exactly identical. You might need slightly different spark plugs, I'm not sure, just give it a Google, but the process is the same. You'll just have to obviously buy 6 spark plugs instead of 4 like I have, so it sucks to be you in that case, but you have the joy of 6 cylinders under your right foot, so pays for itself. Also what you're going to be needing, which I don't have shown yet, is some oil. Basically what I use in most of my cars, New Holland 10W40, full synthetic. I'll just be throwing that in here. So please excuse how dusty and dirty it is in here, by the way. I literally just do not care at all about this car. Moving on. So I've just popped off the spark plug cover. It's just 2 screws. You just kind of quarter turn them and they pop out. You don't have to turn them out the whole way. Basically all you do once you get in here is yank these out. Just so that you can see this kind of little plastic tray underneath that comes out, and you'll notice there's just very faint little tabs you can see here. Get any kind of flathead, just give it a little bit of a pry and they'll pop right out. Just have to work it out a little bit. So now that that's playing nicely, down in these, when you do this for your car, you just want to have a little bit of a look for any oil. So if you do find you've got a lot of oil in any one of these, might be time for a new valve cover gasket. Not a difficult job, but a little bit annoying, especially if the studs, it's an aluminium head, so the threads are very fragile. So someone in the past might have tightened them up and stripped them, or I had some fun with that with my old E30, so I know that very well, unfortunately. Here I have a 5/8 spark plug socket, just a pretty normal extension, just to make it super easy on me. I'm going to use an extra extension here. Spark plugs shouldn't be put in very tight, so these shouldn't fight you too much to get loose. There you go. So I'm just going to carry that on for the remaining 3, and then we'll start putting the new ones in. So just to show you for a quick reference, here's the 4 spark plugs we took out of the engine from front to back. And here's just an example of one of the new spark plugs we're going to be putting in so that you can see the difference. So the process for putting these things in is literally identical to taking them out, of course. There's no special tricks. You just want to be careful not to cross thread these and stuff up the threads. That can be annoying. Annoying being an understatement. It would be a lot of work to fix. The other thing is not to over tighten them. You don't want to tighten these so far that they, snap the threads once again, and then you can't tighten anything in there ever again. Both things very easily avoided. What I generally will do is I'll get our little extension with the 5/8 socket on there. I'll put my spark plug in there, and then I'll just sort of shoot it down here by hand, give it a bit of a wiggle, and then just start tightening it by hand until I kind of feel that I'm not getting any unusual resistance. And then only once it's too tight to turn by hand will I get my ratchet, give it a couple of turns, and I basically just turn it till it's snug. As soon as it starts to be snug, quarter turn more, done. Does not need to be over tight. Can't stress that enough, honestly. You'll ruin your day if you over tighten these things. So you can see it's just started to get tight. About a quarter turn more. Done. Okie dokie. So we've got the car jacked up. I've got my oil pan underneath. I'm about to start draining the oil. while I'm waiting for that to drain, I'm going to swap the air filter out. It's super easy. There's just some little clips on the sides of the air box. It's pretty intuitive. You just flick them up and then they flick back. Old, new. That's all you have to do. Air filter done. Something I've always found very satisfying when servicing BMWs is the fact that when you buy an oil filter, it comes with obviously the oil filter, but it also comes with new O-ring gasket for the filter housing. Comes with, I don't know if you can see, just a little tiny rubber O-ring that sits at the top of the long stud that kind of feeds through the top of it, and even a new crunch washer for the sump plug. I don't know why, but no other car I've ever serviced, which is mostly only Japanese stuff, they never come with that. So little attention to detail stuff, I like it. So as you can see, I've got my funnel ready. Another little OCD thing I like to do before I go and change the oil filter or start putting the oil in is I just run like 200 ml of fresh oil just through the top, just to kind of get a little bit of a clean out, push any of the remaining old fluid out. Just another weird OCD thing that I've kind of picked up along the way and now feel awkward not doing. I'm going to start looking at the oil filter. Depending on the age of your car, I believe the older ones had like a big sort of nut on top that you could lock a massive socket onto to get this loose. My E30 definitely did from memory. But this one is just like a stupid plastic cup. This is one of the later year models. It was really, really tight. I don't know what monkey did this up before, but these do not need to be that tight. What I ended up doing, if you're curious, was getting a hose clamp, clamping it around there. Didn't do it up too tight, just tight enough to bite it. And then I just used a flathead and a mallet just to kind of knock it loose. It took quite a little bit of effort, but she's now loose. So if you happen to get yourself in the same predicament, you now know what to do. From what I understand, there should be a little rubber O-ring. I think you can just make it out on the end of this. That needs to be replaced, and there's a rubber O-ring just up here, somewhere at the top there, that needs to be replaced. Alright, so I've got my new gaskets on, top, middle, bottom. I'm gonna go under the car, thread this back into the sump, tighten it up. Doesn't have to be super tight. I won't show you that because my hands are all oily. I'm gonna tighten that up before we put the new oil filter back in, so that then I can put a little bit of oil in with the oil filter. I'll show you that in just a second. So I've just sat the oil filter inside. I put a little bit of oil on top of it just to kind of dampen it a little bit. Now I'm just tightening this up. It's rated at 5 litres, including the filter. Put about that in. Alright, so engine's completely done. Now the last thing on the list for today is the fuel filter. Depending on what region you're in, it's on this side of the car. For me, it's the passenger side, being in Australia. That's the new fuel filter there. That's what it looks like. Basically underneath the car, which I'll show you in a little bit, there's just a little plastic panel that sort of sits over it. You undo 2 little bolts, that comes off. And then there's basically just some weird little fittings on each end that you have to undo. Drop the other one out, put the new one in. Should be pretty quick. I have done it on my M5 before. Now to do the fuel filter, you got to make sure that you don't have too much pressure in the fuel system, otherwise it's going to spray fuel absolutely everywhere, which is not fun. So to alleviate the pressure from the system, what you do is you pull out the fuel pump fuse, which obviously means it won't get fuel. Then we just start the car, run it until it dies. It'll obviously die when it stops receiving fuel. There'll be some fuel in the system already, but once it gets rid of that, it'll die from the pump. That'll shut it off and that'll alleviate some fuel pressure, and we can keep going. You join me from under the car. You can see here, this is just where the fuel filter is. It's just a little plastic, kind of a bit of a ghetto housing actually on this car compared to the M5, but you can sort of see it in there. There's just a bolt here, bolt here. I'll take those off and then we'll see what we're faced with. Get the cover off. Ooh, there's a spider. Being in Oz, of course, there's the obligatory spider. Not the funnest placement. I've never seen so many redbacks in such a small space. Like I spray and then I come back and there's like a new one has entered the chat. I've already put the new fuel filter on. I'm basically just at the point now of putting the little holding clamp back on and then putting the shield back over it, and then we're done. Anyway, I'm not going to bother showing putting the fuel filter covers back on. It's pretty straightforward. I'm just going to get it done, hopefully not get eaten alive by spiders, and then we will finish up. Time to give her a tickle. I'm going to cycle the key twice just because it's got the new fuel filter. Cool, sounds like success. Job done. That's how you service your E36. Peace out, fellas.